Well, this is going to be the kind of video that no one likes to make, but recent events have compelled me to say a few words on something that's hit America here pretty hard over the last couple of days, and especially close to home for me in particular. As you know, there were 2 mass shootings here in the last 72 hours, one in El Paso, Texas, and one here in Dayton. Dayton happens to be my hometown. It's where I grew up. I was born here, live here, went to college here. I'll probably die here. When tragedies like this happen, I've always tried to avoid the trap of using geography as a crutch for like symbolic outrage. What I mean by that is it's really a pecking order in the death and grief any of these tragedies make us feel just because of the proximity. Well, I mean, it matters if your family's been devastated by it. For you, your life's changed forever. It's turned upside down. And part of you has died too, so I get that. But luckily for me, I didn't know any of the victims here in Dayton, but that's just by sheer luck. I know people who work in the Oregon District of Dayton. I know people who live on that street. So my good fortune is someone else's worst nightmare. It's kind of hard to feel good about that. This is a town that was punched in the gut just a couple of months ago. You might have seen on the cable news networks the tornadoes that went through here in the northern part of the city. Buildings I used to work in were directly affected by that tornado. So what I'm getting at is sometimes the difference between life and death is just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But if there's any town in America that I think can overcome this 1-2 punch, it's probably Dayton. So let me tell you a little bit about my town. This is a blue-collar city and always has been. In Dayton, you got to work just a little bit harder for someone to take notice or to earn some credit. We're the kind of town that doesn't really have the Cincinnati skyline. We're not the hub of the wheel like Columbus. We're not the franchise of Cleveland. And we're often that town that's sort of on the way to your destination. And in many ways, the city has sort of embraced that disposition as an underdog community fighting for respect and for opportunity to put our best foot forward. It's a crossroads community where people directly travel on 2 of the biggest interstate arteries in the country right through us. So people know who we are, but sometimes they don't stop to take a look. This is a town where 2 bicycle mechanics were self-taught, self-motivated, self-funded, and achieved what the greatest minds in the world with the deepest financial backing could just fumble around with. So it's that dark horse mentality that just runs really thick here. And when outsiders count Daytonians out, we kind of take exception to that. We're small enough to fly low on the radar, but we're large enough to make some noise when we're poked with the stick. So no matter where you are in the world, when you run into somebody, when you cross paths with another Daytonian, it's kind of just a secret handshake that says, hey, I got your 6. But yeah, some pages are harder to turn than others, and this one's not going to be easy. But we just need to do it like everything else, with a little bit of a chip on our shoulders. We can't lose that edge. It's what makes us who we are here as a city. And maybe in the course of doing that, it'll be a lesson for others to emulate too. So the question everybody is asking right now is, why? It's a question we've been asking far too often recently, but it just seems like the answers we come up with never really drill down to the disease and just focus on the symptoms. So I've got my own observations about this, and I want to share them with you and see if they resonate. So first, we're suffering a plague of dysfunction in our homes and at our dinner tables, and nothing is just ever going to replace the lessons of a healthy childhood surrounded by a mom and a dad doing equal parts love and discipline. Being a parent's the hardest job in the world. It's the most important job you can ever take upon yourself. And choosing a good spouse is kind of contingent upon that, isn't it? Without the foundation to raise kids, kids are just going to emulate the mistakes of their parents. It kind of is monkey see, monkey do in a lot of ways. So don't be that parent. Teen pregnancy, unwed motherhood, absentee fathers, skyrocketing divorce rates. I kind of just nuked the nuclear family. And so in order to teach kids, to be respect for others, to be kind, show compassion from the vulnerable, the elderly, and so on, You got to respect yourself first and resist instant gratification for long-term gains. And we need our parents to be parents again and to recognize there's no free lunch. You can't have it all. You can't have the family time, the education, the career, the hobbies, the vacations, material wealth. Something's always got to give. And there's only 24 hours in a day, so your kids are going to need you more than they need 50 video games and 5 different private lessons on musical instruments. A daycare center is not a replacement for being alone with your kid. And so we need to make the tougher choices about that kind of stuff and what's important, because our kids are turning into adults without adult skills to interface with the world. The most important hour of every day has to get back to being at the dinner table with your family, with the TV off, with the cell phones put away. So that's what I'm hoping for. The most valuable commodity that we have is time, because you can't recapture it. It's not like losing $100, you can go out and make another $100 and make yourself whole again. Time is a non-renewable resource. So you think about your childhood memories, and the fondest ones aren't that bike you got as a 9-year-old on your birthday. It's that trip to the zoo with your family. It's spending weekends at your grandparents, playing catch with your dad in the backyard. Those are the best memories we have, because it was about spending time with our family. You can always get another bike, but you can't always go back and play catch with your dad. So somewhere along the way, parents have just, for lack of a better word, stopped being parents and started being friends. And that's fine when your son or your daughter is 21 years old, they're an adult, they can do what they want, but it's not your job to be a friend to a 7-year-old. Too many kids have stopped hearing the word no and just did not develop the coping skills with personal disappointment. And that's part of getting last place trophies now. These kids grew up into adults and they believe the world owes them something, even when they didn't earn it. But it's really worse than that, because now they feel it's their duty to exact revenge for those injustices. And the common thread in most of these shootings, males under 25, is just their diabolic inability to swallow failure. And we've just lost teaching our generation of kids that failure is normal. Success is an exception in most cases, even for people who have done well. So now the smallest setback in a child's life is just a meltdown. They're not good life lessons for these young kids when their brains are developing. And then they can't apply it when they get older. So kids, they need fathers in the home. They need fathers in their lives. They need mothers capable of picking good fathers. Like it or not, women are pretty much the gatekeepers of that relationship. They're the ones that pick the spouses. So, you stop shacking up and start getting married and start picking good spouses. And when you have trouble, work out your problems. Kids, everything just seems to fall out of favor anymore, and you just give up. In the old days, if you weren't happy in a marriage, you worked on it. You worked on your marriage until you found happiness and you found love again. And today, relationships are kind of just contingent on everything being perfect, everything being a Cinderella story. And it's just not how marriage works. It's hard work. You said for better or worse, short of physical abuse, mental abuse, infidelity, you made your bed, so you need to lie in it. Children don't want to emulate quitters. So they need the both of you in the home working together. No matter what the gender pronoun people say, a mother and a father are not identical chess pieces on the playing board. They carry equal weight, but very different weight. You've noticed I haven't yet talked about the elephant in the room, and that's guns. And it might seem weird talking about a mass shooting and not talk about guns, but the gun is really the symptom to the problem, not the disease. Just like food is a symptom and not the disease with obesity. Food and guns are nothing more than conduits for a corruption in the mind. Until you fix the mind, it doesn't matter what set of laws you pass, it's not going to solve the problem. So we need to wire our brains better from the beginning and not get forced to intervene when a 19-year-old goes off the rails. And you have to untangle that rat's nest of poor execution by their absent-minded parents or absentee parents. We got to do a better job of preventive maintenance and not after the horse has left the barn. So parents, do your job. And part of that is mental health. It's a serious issue. Got to tackle it as soon as it's identified. Recognize it as an early edit, when your kid's young. Do they have verbal communication problems? Do they have self-esteem issues? Are they cruel to animals? Are they physically violent? Behavioral issues at schools, poor grades, all that stuff. they have trouble expressing their feelings. You know, all that might have a good, legitimate reason. It could be dyslexia or Tourette's or autism or something, but you just need to get the help when help is needed. And folks can light all the candles they want, and they can retweet all the hashtags that they like, and that might make you feel better, but it's not really going to solve the problem. And maybe that is part of the problem. We like to do things that make us feel good and not what produces good results. And that's a real problem. That's kind of how we have arrived here. So as a country, we just need to start doing what works and less about what feels good. We've got a people problem, and the people problem is us. The U.S. right now has more guns than at any point in history, yet violent crime is at near record lows. Kids in the 50s and 60s, they used to take their guns to school. They had shooting ranges, they had shooting teams, they had ROTC training. Nobody thought anything of it. It was never a problem. And now it is. So we've gone basically in 3 generations from fighting the Nazis, fighting the Japanese Empire, to now blowing your wad and calling 911 because your Big Mac was served a little cold. This is not the America I was promised. We've gone soft, and our kids have gotten soft. They're soft because our adults are soft, and they're just unable to cope with benign stresses in their lives. So rather than taking away the guns from all the people, let's just take away the problem people from the guns. Most gun owners are completely sensible, normal, responsible people with zero threat, NRA members. They're the most law-abiding citizens in the country, and not just with guns, but with jaywalking. So we got to do a better job of punishing the sick and the twisted, and not stepping on the freedoms of those who are just trying to mind their own business and live their lives. And if we don't do that, we're going to end up like Europe, where they're trying to ban screwdrivers. And I don't want to live in a country like that. I don't want to live in a country where a few bad drivers are preventing me from owning a 1,000-horsepower car because I don't need one. So we'll get through this. As long as we recognize that the gastric bypass surgery is not really the solution to our problem. If you're going to trim the fat, you got to do it by fixing the hardened hearts and minds of our country. And that starts at conception. The mind is a muscle, and we kind of just let it atrophy. And if that's not addressed, we're just going to continue to eat our way through the staples, so to speak. So we've got to give ourselves the tools to be successful before it's too late, and put our parents and children in a position to succeed. But even, as important as that, demand more by raising the bar. We can't afford the bigotry of low expectations. Your children are your personal creation. You got to do the things that give them the best odds at becoming a well-centered, responsible person, and not a deranged sociopath with severe mental health issues. Your influence and skills as a parent are what's going to turn this ship around. And you can only give what's best for your kids when you're doing what's best for yourself as a good husband, a good wife, a good parent. And if you do little to none of the small things, it almost borders on child abuse. Your apathy and indifference are going to make a difference, and for all the wrong reasons. And it's going to guarantee your kid has the weakest chance of overcoming all these hang-ups. So we're going to see Dayton bounce back from this, I'm sure of that. And in some ways we already have, because just of the direction that the town was headed before this. Our downtown's revitalized. We got shops and restaurants and the arts down there. We've got a riverscape area that's blossoming. High-paying tech jobs have replaced manufacturing jobs. So we were already in a pretty good place, but just not right this second. When you get punched in the gut, you kind of lose your wind a bit, and it takes a little bit of time to get back on your feet. But when we do, and we will, we'll have our chests out again, and we'll fight the good fight just like we have in the past. Gem City has always punched above its weight class, and Daytonians kind of just do that because we got the right stuff. So if you resonate with anything that I just said, you've been part of it, share this video on YouTube, share it on social media. If you're new to this channel, please take a moment to subscribe, and for those that have been around, you can always click the bell and you'll get notifications every time I upload a new video. Thanks for listening.